So we've checked in and we have got the Lavender Room. Now, at which point do I let Adi know that that's where one of the ghosts has been seen? This is the point.
In this episode, we find ourselves at Hazlewood Castle, said to be one of the most historic buildings in Britain, currently operating as a hotel. This place is so old that it was recorded in the Domesday Book of 1086, and it stood through some of the most turbulent chapters in English history, including what many historians say was the bloodiest battle ever fought on English soil. Factor into that some hidden priests, visiting royals, and a sprinkling of ghost stories, I'd say we've got a rather interesting stay ahead of us.
Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Claire, this is the Wanderlust Way. First off, let me say a massive thank you to everybody that supports this journey that we're going on, and for everybody that likes, comments, shares, subscribes, sends super thanks, becomes members. Honestly, everything you're doing is really helping things to grow, and it's allowing me to carry on doing things like this and sharing the stories along the way as I find them with you. So today I'm really excited because we're staying in Hazlewood Castle Hotel, which if you saw the Lumley Castle Hotel video we did, this one's even older. It was in the Domesday Book of 1086, and we've got stories of priests hiding in the walls. There's been royalty visit here, including Mary, Queen of Scots, and there are of course a few ghost stories along the way as well. So that's enough waffle, but let's wander.
Tucked away in the countryside near Tadcaster in North Yorkshire, Hazlewood Castle sits within 77 acres of parkland, high on a ridge overlooking the Vale of Towton. From here, it would have commanded the surrounding landscape for centuries, an imposing presence in a region shaped by conflict and change. Hazlewood is far more than just a hotel. It's been so many things over the years. It isn't just a castle either that stood the test of time. It's a place that's been lived in continuously for hundreds of years. For most of that time, at its heart has been the Vavasour family. For around 900 years, they held this land through war, upheaval, and periods where simply holding on to your beliefs could put your life at risk. They are not here now, but there are reminders of them everywhere. And some of those stories didn't stay here, they travelled. So if you're watching from New Zealand, you might want to stick around because a few of the threads we'll be picking up today stretch all the way to your side of the world too. Today Hazlewood is a hotel, a place for weddings, celebrations and countryside escapes, but those earlier chapters haven't disappeared. They've settled into the walls, seeped into the stone, and we're going to go looking for them. Thousands of people began their story here, and it's possible that over 2,500 people may still have Hazlewood Castle listed on their own paperwork, which means even now there are families, and some of you might be watching, whose connection to this place isn't just historical, it's personal.
So Hazlewood Castle, it is near Tadcaster in between York and Leeds, and it was owned by the Vavasours or the Vavasours for almost 900 years. Now just as we've walked in, straight away there's a list of them all there on the board with their crest. So I'll tell you a little bit more as we're going on. When I first walked through the doors of this place, I was absolutely blown away. It's so breathtaking. There's just history oozing out of every little corner. Now there's a bookcase as well in the Flemish room when you first come in. It's got about the Vavasour wine, and there's a little battle here. I think this is Marston Moor. Yeah, the Battle of Marston Moor, not Towton. And then I believe we've not had the pleasure of meeting him, but there's a historian here called Stephen Watson. He's Hazlewood historian, and he does have a book about the castle, and you can buy it on reception if you come. But yeah, there's loads of history here. If you like history, it's a cool place to explore.
I've imagined what the inside of this place might look like ever since I made the decision to book a stay. In my mind, I pictured ornate high ceilings, richly decorated wallpapers, and historic furniture dotted sporadically throughout the rooms, the sort of thing you might expect when you book an old English castle hotel break. And as we meander down the corridors, across the creaky floors and through the beams of light that shift amongst the flickering shadows, I am not disappointed. Looking down at my feet, I can't help but imagine the thousands of steps that have walked here before mine. Some perhaps gliding their way to an exquisite medieval banquet, some rushing in the fear of persecution, others hot-footed through these halls carrying news to whoever was master at the time, news of war, of political change, or something far more personal. I don't find myself thinking about the many people who have been wed beneath these ceilings, for example, though theirs is the story that belongs to Hazlewood today. Perhaps one day, curious wanderers like myself will walk these halls and talk of a time when this place was a hotel, when people came here to celebrate, to escape, to begin something new. But I'm not thinking about the future, I'm thinking about the past, and what whispers of it might still linger within these walls.
So we're going to go inside, have a little look. Oh, it's very nice. I'll do you a little room tour shortly, but just while let's just have a cup of tea and everything, and we'll chat a little bit more about why Hazlewood Castle has been on my radar for a while to come and visit.
Stepping inside Hazlewood, it quickly becomes clear that this isn't a building from one moment in time. What you're walking through is the result of centuries of change, a place that's been shaped, adapted, and held onto through generation after generation. At the centre of that story is the Vavasour family. They've been connected to this land since the Norman conquest, when a man named Monsieur le Vavasour, a Norman, took control of the estate. And from that point on, the Vavasours remained. For around 900 years, this was their home, held through wars, political upheaval, and long periods where their Catholic faith placed them on the wrong side of power. And they didn't just live here, they endured here. And some of their stories stretch far beyond these walls. One in particular has even been linked, at least in part, to the legend of Robin Hood, but I will come back to that a little later. Because as you move through the castle now, you're not just walking through a hotel. You're stepping into the result of all those years, every decision, every addition, every moment of survival layered quietly into the walls around us.
So as is custom on this channel, I think it's time we did a little bit of a room tour. So we booked on the hotel's main website, and I booked a double room, which was £160 for the night. Now it is a Saturday night, so it might be a little bit cheaper if you're coming midweek. However, we've just arrived, and beside from the fact that it's one of the haunted rooms, supposedly, we've actually been given a suite for some unknown reason. So that's, well, it looks like a suite anyway. It's definitely bigger than a double room. So this is called the Lavender Room or suite. Now this is the first room that you come into, and we've got our own dining table. However, we will be going downstairs to have dinner because that is in a really historic part of the castle that I really want to show you. We've got a bit of a dressing table here and teas and coffees and such. Biscuits, already eaten those. There's a sofa and then there's a little fireplace with a TV. But I don't think we're going to get a chance for TV tonight because we've got lots of exploring to do. I love the decor and I absolutely love these lamps. These are gorgeous. It's like being in the forest. In here, just a bit of a cupboard. So extra hanging wardrobe space. So I suppose if you were coming for longer than a night and you had lots of things with you, that would be dead handy. Okay, so this is the room. Should we do the bathroom first? Right then, the bathroom's huge, really, really modern.
Right, so before we go any further, I feel like I should probably let you in on the ghost story linked to this particular room, because it centres around the bathroom area just here. Now it comes from a housekeeper who was in this room cleaning. She was kneeling down in the bedroom, working on the mirror that faces directly into the bathroom. The very same mirror that I'll be stood in front of later, checking my outfit, putting my makeup on and getting ready for the evening, with the bathroom just behind me. Now, as she worked, she became aware of someone in that bathroom. Not in a dramatic way, just a sense that someone was there. And she believed in it so much that she started to talk to them, thinking that it might be another member of staff. A normal conversation, the kind you wouldn't think twice about. But when she finished and she turned to say goodbye, there was nobody there. No guest, no colleague, just the empty bathroom. And it's strange because there's something about mirrors, isn't there? Across different cultures and beliefs, mirrors have often been thought of as something more than just reflective surfaces. Sometimes described as thin places or even gateways where the boundary between this world and something else isn't quite as solid as we'd like to think, especially when you're standing there focused on your own reflection while everything else just sits out of view behind you. Tonight I'll be right here looking into that same mirror, the bathroom just over my shoulder, and I can't help but wonder whether I'll find myself glancing up just to check if there's something there that shouldn't be. And if you have any stories about mirror-related paranormal experiences, then please do feel free to share them in the comments.
I've got an absolutely massive shower. I mean, you could have a party in this shower, it's huge. So yeah, loads of room. And then there is obviously normal sink. There is some toiletries, conditioner, body lotion, shampoo, shower gel. The bath I've just mentioned, absolutely huge. I like this. And what I love about it is the tall skylight at the top. Because obviously it's a really historic building, isn't it? So things are going to be higher than normal. And then the bedroom. So in the normal doubles, obviously you get a double bed, but this is definitely bigger than a double bed. I would say this is a super king, perhaps. And there's a little chest at the front. I don't know what's in here, I've not looked yet. Could store what you want, isn't there? Yeah, I like that. I'm going to be honest, one of the favourite things for me about this room is the view. Now it's starting to go dusk now, so I don't know if you can see, but I've took some footage earlier of the view, which is all over the fields and things. Now, I don't know if I've already mentioned it, but Towton Moor battle took place very, very closely to Hazlewood Castle. It's one of the bloodiest battles that ever took place on English soil. Now, I haven't had a look at Google Maps yet to work out the proximity of whether that was the battlefield or whether it's that way, but I'll let you know later on. But that was a battle in the Wars of the Roses. It was a real turning point. We'll get into that later. But then we've got the wardrobe, which I love these old-fashioned wardrobes. Plenty of space, loads of hangers, loads of drawers, loads of creakiness. History just seeping out. So we're going to go and get ready for the evening because we have got, it's nearly 7 o'clock now, we've got a table booked at 8. I'd like to have a little explore, tell you some of the ghost stories, tell you some of the history stories as well, and yes, see how the evening goes. So we've just done a little bit of looking on Google Maps, and it does indeed look like the view that we've just had, obviously it's going dark now, is over the area where the Battle of Towton was. Now, this is one of the most bloodiest battles fought on English soil. There was estimates of around 20,000 people died in this battle, 1% of the English population at the time. Now, those records are heavily disputed between historians. Of course they are, that's always the case with things like this. But regardless of all that, this battle, when it happened, was said there's a river that runs down the side of it. It's called the River Cock. And they said that when this battle happened, the river ran red with the blood of the men for days after. So you can only imagine how horrific it was. And
as we meander through Hazlewood, whether it's these corridors or the land just beyond them, it's worth remembering that long before this was a castle, before it was even a family seat, this was Saxon land. The earliest recorded names linked to Hazlewood are two Saxons, Gamiel and Arkil. And Arkil in particular wasn't just a landowner, he was involved in something much bigger. In 1069 he was among those who helped drive the Normans out of York, a bold and dangerous act at a time when England was still reeling from the Norman conquest. but that resistance didn't last. What followed was one of the most brutal campaigns ever carried out on English soil, and it became known as the Harrying of the North. William the Conqueror, determined to crush any rebellion, laid waste to huge parts of northern England, destroying homes, burning crops, leaving entire communities to starve. And it's estimated that as much as 75% of the population in some areas may have died or simply never returned. And places like this, quiet, rural, tucked away, wouldn't have escaped that. So by the time the Domesday Book was compiled in 1086, the landscape had changed. Saxon landowners had been replaced, and here at Hazlewood, the land was in the hands of a Norman, Morger le Vavasour, a man said to have served as a doorkeeper to William the Conqueror himself, a position of trust, and one that likely placed him close to power. And from that moment on, a new chapter began.
We're now standing in what is the Flemish Hall. This, I believe, some of the carvings here came from Flanders. But I've just seen I'm just going to read this to you. It says, the Flemish Hall walls are adorned with 17th century wood carvings telling of stories from the Bible, brought to Hazlewood in the mid-20th century, originating in a Carmelite church in Ghent. The Jezebel fireplace was rescued from the old hall at Wakefield before its ruination. The stone carvings depict Jezebel being thrown from the palace window. Jezebel is said to have persecuted the prophets of Jawa and to have fabricated false evidence of blasphemy against an innocent landowner who refused to sell his property to King Ahab, causing the landowner to be put to death. For these transgressions against the God and people of Israel, the Bible relates Jezebel met a gruesome death, thrown out of a window by members of her own court retinue, and the flesh of her corpse eaten by stray dogs. That's a bit grim.
Morger le Vavasour was the first Norman occupant, but it's around 1290 when Sir William Vavasour built and fortified the stone structure, which was more substantial and more defensive. And it's about now the story takes a dark turn again, because the Vavasours were a Catholic family, and at certain times in history, as we know, that came with real risk.
Who guessed that I was going to come through the bookcase? I mean, this hotel is full of secrets and obviously hiding places. That's one of them. And then obviously the hiding places for the priests that used to hide out during those scary days. One of the places I was really excited to have a little look at and show you guys was the chapel, and it's right next to Hazlewood Castle Hotel. Now, this place might look completely idyllic and peaceful, but this place has its secrets. At times there would have been whispers going on, because some of the things that were going on in this chapel were the sort of things that could get you executed.
The Vavasours were a Catholic family, and at certain points in our history, that could be a very dangerous game indeed. Defying the Protestant faith wasn't just a slap on the wrist, it could mean fines, prison, or worse. The Vavasours, as we now know, managed to get through these times with a mixture of careful behaviour, quiet cunning, and perhaps a little bit of good fortune. Because on the surface, they played the game. They turned up at the odd Protestant service, they paid the fines, they kept up appearances, all while secretly continuing their worship here, in this chapel, to the old faith. And it must have felt like walking on eggshells. One wrong move, one wrong word, and everything could come crashing down. On the surface they played it well, but behind closed doors, whispered only amongst the most trusted, a very different story was unfolding. Priests were still welcome here. Mass was still being said, and those priests were being hidden. Now, if you know the story of Margaret Clitheroe in York, which we have touched on before, you'll know exactly how serious that was. She was executed in a brutal way for harbouring priests, so there was very little mercy for this sort of thing. And the Vavasours would have known that, and still they took the risk. Across England, priests were being hunted, forced to move from house to house, relying on families willing to risk everything to keep them hidden. And places like Hazlewood became part of that secret world. Now just imagine it for a moment. You've got seconds. You're rushed out of sight, no time to think, just a hand guiding you quickly into a space hidden within walls. You pull yourself in, knees tight to your chest, darkness swallowing everything around you. And then you hear it. Boots. Voices. Doors opening, getting closer. You freeze, completely still, because even your breathing feels too loud. One sound and that's it. Not just for you, but for everyone in this house. Above you, they're acting like everything's normal, answering questions, keeping their voices steady while their hearts must be pounding, because they know what's at stake. The footsteps move closer. You hold your breath. Do not move. Do not make a sound. You wait. Seconds feel like minutes. Minutes feel like hours. Until eventually the noise fades. And this time you're safe. And standing here now in the quiet, it's hard to picture that kind of fear, hidden just beneath the surface. But it was here.
It was 1461 on Palm Sunday when one of the most bloodiest battles on English soil happened here. Now, I believe it's in this sort of area behind me, and it was the turning point in the Wars of the Roses, where the Lancastrians and the Yorkists fought for, they say, 10 hours.
And so, as if by magic or the powers of technology, we are now transported to Towton battlefield. And there's a sign here linked to Hazlewood, which I thought you'd find interesting. So it says the Vavasour connection. A man-at-arms leaps the cock beck. Hazlewood Castle can be seen in the distance. By 1461, the estate had been in the ownership of the Vavasour family since the Norman conquest, and traditionally its boundary was marked by the cock beck. Although vassals of the Percys, Sir Henry Vavasour fought for the Yorkists at Towton and survived. He became sheriff for Yorkshire in 1471 and died in 1499 in his 70s. And there's a little quote here. Vavasour at the field of Towton did leap over cock with, some words have been missing, behind.
Field. Now this is a really significant site in English history. Archaeologists and treasure hunters as such love to explore it, and they're always finding things. I believe some of the earliest handguns from England were found in this area, as well as skeletons and things like that. So I will do a little bit more about the Battle of Towton, perhaps on a separate video if you want to watch that later. But yeah, this is basically where it happened, so we're right in the heart of history here.
Now, I won't go too deep into the full story here because it is a long one and I'll be covering it properly in a separate video, but it's worth understanding why this place matters. The Battle of Towton wasn't just another clash, it was a turning point in English history. The Yorkists and the Lancastrians, the White Rose and the Red, fighting for control of the throne and ultimately deciding which of two men would become King of England. On one side, the Yorkists were fighting for Edward, just 18 years old at the time, young but determined, and stepping into a fight that had already been set in motion by his father Richard. His story took a brutal turn at the Battle of Wakefield, which would later be remembered by primary school children when they learned about the rainbow. Richard of York gave battle in vain. It was at this battle, or ambush as some historians say, where Edward's father Richard, Duke of York No. 3, and Edmund, Edward's brother, were killed. Their heads later displayed above Micklegate Bar in York. Nice. So of course, by the time Edward found out and realised he was next in line, this wasn't just politics anymore, it was personal. The two sides met here in 1461 in the middle of a snowstorm, and what followed was brutal. Some reports say the fighting lasted for hours, up to 10, with thousands of men losing their lives. It's often claimed that as much as 1% of the English population died here on that day, and that the River Cock, which runs through this valley, turned red with the blood of the dead. Some of those details are debated, but what isn't is the outcome. Edward emerged victorious, and Henry, who had remained hiding in York whilst his men fought, lost his crown, at least for the time being. Now, after the battle, there are long-standing rumours that Edward and some of his men stopped here at Hazlewood to take refreshment. And given how close the castle lies to the battlefield, it's certainly not beyond the realms of possibility.
This is the beef short rib we've gone for. Now, the amusing thing is, and I've just joked to Adi about it, may be a ghost. This cork was in this bottle, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it just popped out. And it's not a fizzy wine, it's a still wine. So,
Down here, beneath the castle, the Vavasour restaurant sits quietly in the cellar, wrapped in thick stone walls that have seen centuries pass without a word. The light is low, candles flicker against the stone, and shadows shift gently across the room, as though the past is still moving somewhere just out of sight. It's beautiful, atmospheric, almost comforting. And yet it's impossible not to imagine what these walls have witnessed. Because although it's unlikely that Edward IV ever dined in the cellar, you can't help but picture him nearby, taking refuge within these walls on a night much like this. Beyond the castle, the fields of Towton, still heavy with the weight of what has just passed, victory on one hand and the loss of thousands on the other. And here, beneath it all, life continuing as it always has, quietly flickering in the shadow of history.
Now, what's really interesting about this place is that after the Vavasours had had it for 900 years, they eventually sold it or got rid of it, and the family went over to New Zealand and started their own vineyard. And I believe that you can still get Vavasour wine. Well, you can, because we've just seen it in the cabinet as you come through, so I'll show you that in a second. But the Vavasours, it's a vineyard. So if you're watching from New Zealand and you've ever drank that wine, let us know what it tastes like. Unfortunately, they only had a Chardonnay. I'm not a big fan of Chardonnay, but that's what they were doing. So, and then the house it was in the 70s, it became a Carmelite friary. So the monks lived here. But before that, maternity hospital as well.
I'm about to show you a very important room here in the hotel, one that could perhaps explain some of the ghostly cries that are sometimes reported by guests in the night. When the lights are low and a quiet blanket settles over Hazlewood, when the corridors fall still and every sound seems just that little bit louder, some guests have spoken of hearing something unexpected. A sound that's easy to question at first, until you realise what it resembles. A cry. Soft, distant, unmistakable. The cry of a baby. And it's said that what people hear today may not be haunting at all, but an echo from a very different chapter in this building's past.
We are currently inside a room known as the Victoria Room, and it's absolutely fabulous in here. The wallpaper, the events manager has told me, is originally from the rooms of Queen Victoria herself, so possibly from her bedroom, who knows, but it's absolutely beautifully decorated. And this would have been the maternity ward. So there's a sign up as well. They had a Hazlewood babies reunion here. And it says, in 1939, the castle was requisitioned by the health authority and used as an emergency maternity hospital for 14 years. During that time, as many as 9,000 babies were born here at the castle. Given that birthing was carried out in the community, the mums who gave birth here would have paid for the treatment received. The Victoria Lounge was used as the delivery room, with the Great Hall used as the ward. The library was where matrons slept on a night shift, with the Flemish Hall as the sleeping quarters for the nursing staff. The old bar and old dining room was the nursery. So that's absolutely fascinating. We're in the library and this place feels so historic. It's got some beautiful books and carvings on the wall and everything. Now there's also this fireplace, and I'm told that there is a ghost story linked to this, and that a ghost of a priest or a monk, can't remember, priest or a monk, is said to walk through here. And the reason people believe that that is true is because this is where the cloisters used to be. This is where they would get the access to the cloisters, I believe.
Like many old buildings with centuries of history, Hazlewood has gathered its fair share of ghost stories over the years, and while some are harder to verify than others, a few accounts appear again and again. One of the most frequently mentioned is a dark-robed figure, often described as a monk, who has been seen moving through St Margaret's courtyard, emerging from one of the doorways before drifting silently towards a yew tree and disappearing completely. The same figure is also said to have crossed the courtyard and entered what is now a laundry room, vanishing just as suddenly as it appeared. Elsewhere in the building there are reports of a priestly figure walking from the direction of the Great Hall into the library, following what would once have been a natural route through the building towards the cloisters, before disappearing near where the fireplace now stands. Some of the bedrooms have their own stories too. In the Tansy Room, guests have reported the presence of a monk in a dark robe, while in the Lavender Room, a housekeeper once felt someone in the room with her while cleaning, even speaking aloud, believing it to be a colleague, only to later realise she had been alone. In the Rose Room, there have been mentions of shifting shadows, and one particularly unsettling account from Christmas 2003 tells of a guest kept awake all night by the sound of a crying baby. When she reported it the next morning, staff confirmed there were no babies staying in the rooms nearby. There are some websites out there which list this place as still being very active in a paranormal sense, so I'll keep you posted if we experience anything like that tonight. Right then, so we've had an absolutely amazing dinner, I must say. That was absolutely fabulous. Can highly recommend that. And now, then we went to the bar, we had a little drink, and now we are getting into bed. Adi has just mentioned the monk again. I don't know whether he's worried that that might happen. We might see him. But it was really cold when we first came in the room, and I was like, oh. Anyway, I checked the radiator. The radiator was cold, so we've just turned the heating on. Yeah, Adi doesn't like ghosts, so be interesting to see how this pans out. But to be fair, I don't think it's got a weird vibe about it. I think it's got a really nice vibe. So we will see. Good night, everybody. And if anything happens, I will let you know in the morning. Is the morning after the night before, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you because I do like to do that on that channel. Obviously we visit lots of haunted places and I always give my honest feedback. This particular room, the Lavender Room, did not feel haunted to me. The room was really, really comfortable as well. I think you'd get a good night's sleep here. I didn't feel uneasy at any point, and I did keep looking out every now and then, but I didn't hear any weird noises in the night. It was really, really peaceful. So sorry guys, no ghosts tonight for this video. However, I'm not going to dispute anybody else's real experiences that they've had, and if you have had an experience at this hotel, do please feel free to let me know in the comments. For somebody who loves stories, I'm in my element here because this place absolutely oozes them from every corner, and some of them are written into the very fabric of the building itself. The stone you see here is Tadcaster limestone, a material that was once in huge demand during the medieval period and used in some of the country's most important buildings, including York Minster, as well as abbeys at Selby, Beverley and St Mary's in York, and even parts of Cambridge University. The Vavasour family actually supplied stone from their own quarry for the construction of York Minster in the early 13th century, and one of them, Robert le Vavasour, was recognised for that contribution, his likeness placed above one of the minster's doorways. But it's not just about buildings. There are stories here that blur the line between history and legend. Through the Vavasour family, there are links to Maud, or Matilda le Vavasour. She married Fulk Fitzwarren, a man who became an outlaw in the early 1200s after losing his lands. He's said to have taken to the woods with Maud by his side, leading a band in defiance of the king. And over time, his story became something of a legend, one that some believe may have helped shape the tale of Robin Hood and Maid Marian. And then there are the royal connections. In January 1569, Mary, Queen of Scots, is recorded as having stayed here for a single night as she was moved between Bolton Castle and Tutbury under guard. Just one brief stop in what would become a long and tragic journey. It's that mix of real history, quiet detail, and just a touch of legend that makes a place like this feel so alive. Especially at night, when it almost feels like those stories are still lingering in the walls.
So that is it. We've survived the night at Hazlewood Castle, and I'm going to be honest, this has been an absolutely beautiful stay. I would 100% come here again. The staff have been amazing. The food last night at dinner was lovely, and everybody, yeah, it's just been really welcoming, and it's felt very tranquil and beautiful, and obviously massively historic. So I'm really lucky to have been able to stay here last night. So thanks to everybody for watching. Thank you to everybody from Hazlewood Castle, and hopefully I'll see you in next week's episode. This is obviously for Edward Vavasour. So it says on the inscription, pray for the soul of the Honorary Sir Edward M. Vavasour, who died March the 16th, 1847, aged 60. And I've got another here. Pray for the soul of Sir Edward W. Vavasour, Baronet, I think that says, yep, who died August 23rd, 1885, aged 70, RIP.